Hey everybody, Zach again at newtutorial.com, coming in making a video for you today. I got a really interesting email the other day, and I told the guy, I said, listen, I'm not going to guarantee I can make a video on this, but it was a really good email. Hits on a topic that I feel near and dear to my heart on, and that's creation versus evolution. And a friend of his, the guy's name is Trey, he emailed me this post that his friend posted on Facebook, basically taking a shot at the Bible and saying, this is why I don't believe in God or whatever. And in fact, I'll just go ahead and see if I can read it to you. I got it right here. It says, hey, Zach, I'm not going to put it on the screen, but I'll just read it to you. Hey, Zach, I hope this is the best way to contact you. First, let me start off by saying I love the topics you cover in your videos. They have opened my eyes to many things I was ignorant about, and I praise God for his answers through you. So a buddy of mine put up a post regarding the flood and how these questions he formulated disprove the event, the flood of the Bible. Sadly, I wish I knew and should know the obvious responses to these questions to defend the Father's work, or defend the Father's word and works. I will leave them below. Any help from your knowledge would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. God bless. So here's the questions. I thought these questions were really good, and it's maybe a little bit of a video here, but it's something I really like getting into. The first question is this: was the story of Noah and the flood a figurative story or a literal one? I find it very hard to believe it was a literal event that actually happened. And my answer is, first off, before I get into this, Trey, your friend who posted these questions on Facebook, let me just tell you right now, he's not looking for an answer, okay? He's already made up, some of these questions are phrased in a way where he's already made up his mind, and he's just poking fun at the Bible at this point. He's already made a decision that he does not want to live by the way the Bible tells him to live. He's already having fun living the way he wants to live, and by acknowledging the truth of the Bible, he would have to make changes in his lifestyle, and he just doesn't want to do that. So I'm just telling you, I've encountered this many, many times over. The guy does not care. Just doesn't care, okay? So I'm giving you all these answers just so you know them, and you can continue your study on your own if you want. But just know your friend doesn't care. He's already made up his mind. I seriously doubt he's going to take these answers, because I'm sure you'll show him the video. I seriously doubt he's going to take these answers that I'm going to give you and do his own open-minded investigation to see if they're true or not. I seriously doubt that. All right, but for the sake of giggles, let's go ahead and continue. Was the story of Noah and the flood a figurative story or a literal one? I find it very hard to believe it was a literal event that actually happened. Yes, absolutely. The evidence is all over the planet. Everywhere you look, there's evidence of the worldwide flood. First off, I don't know where you live, but where I live in the Ozarks, when you drive down the highway, they have these cutouts of the hills and mountains, and you drive through, and you see the rocks on the side, and all the rocks have tons and tons of layers. Now, science today, worldly science, will tell you that these layers were laid down over millions and millions of years. But I'm telling you that those layers were laid down in a flood. This is something that you can easily prove on your own. All you have to do is go and Google layering soil jar. Layering, here's a picture, I'm putting it up, layering soil jar. This is a very quick test that anyone can do. Go out, find some soil, find some different soil types in your backyard or wherever you live. Put some sand in there, put some rocks, put some dirt, put some clay, put some different soil types in there, and then shake it up and fill it with water, and then shake it up real good, and then let it sit, and instantly, very quickly, it will settle into layers. This is called hydrologic sorting or sedimentary layering, depending on how you're talking about it. So basically, it's very simple. You can find, I just Googled it. You can find all kinds of images and pictures of people doing this test on their computer, taking pictures of it and showing it in action. Folks, when you see those layers in the dirt, in the side of Rocky Mountains or wherever, these cutaways, that is evidence right there of the flood. It's just on a larger scale. You can do the exact same thing in a jar. Put all these different types of soil, shake them up, and boom, you have layers. Just like you have all over the planet today. So yeah, all kinds of evidence. Also, look at this picture. This is a picture of Google Maps. You can see all the different contours. This is somewhere near where I live. It's just a Google Map picture of all the different places around here. And you see all of the different contours all around this map of the mountains and hills. And if you look at that, you should be able to recognize it, because you will see the exact same types of formations, all these different ripples across the landscape that you will see on a dirt soil after a very heavy rainstorm. And the more loose the dirt, the more easily you'll see it. But after a very heavy rainstorm and a lot of water moving across a dirt surface, you will see these exact type of formations all over the soil. And this is what you see all over the earth. You see these kinds of formations. Folks, this is caused by water runoff. When the world flooded and when the waters receded, it created what you're seeing right here. These mountains, hills, valleys, hollers, canyons, whatever. That's what happens when water recedes. It creates these types of formations all over the ground. And when after a giant rainstorm or a big rainstorm, you'll see the exact same thing. I mean, it's evidence right there. Was it a literal event? Yes. Did it happen worldwide? Yes. And there's evidence all over the place if you just open your eyes up and look with a biblical worldview instead of what the textbooks tell you to look at. But again, Trey, I seriously doubt your friend is going to do the legwork and go out and investigate these things for himself. But, we'll continue. All right, number 2. If it was a literal event, and it was, if Noah had 2 of every animal on the boat, obviously for reproductive reasons, what about parthenogenic species such as the blind snake, whatever that is, Brahmini blind snake. I had to look that up, and I still can't pronounce it. Which are unisexual. All species are female, no males exist, and reproduced asexually. Would he have brought 2 females on the boat just for the hell of it? That's his words, not mine. Okay, so it says, what about parthenogenic species such as the Brahmini blind snake, which are right there I can tell this is one of the reasons why I know he's not interested in answers. He's just, poking fun at the Bible at this point. It says, which are unisexual, all species are female, no males exist. Well, actually, no. When I looked up this animal, Trey, there were plenty of scientific research papers written that are, at least articles that were written from scientific sources that say no males have yet been found or have not been found yet. They are looking for the males on this, and there are animals that have the ability to store sperm once they encounter. Sometimes they can store sperm for their entire life or at least a number of years. There are evidences of snakes that have been able to store sperm for up to 3 or 8 years, depending on who you believe or who you talk to. So this could be one of those reasons. We don't know that it's completely asexual. Also, I think I've made the point in other videos that every animal and plant on the planet has either a sperm or it needs a sperm and a seed. A sperm and an egg to reproduce. The sperm is the seed. So a seed and an egg. You have to have the seed and an egg for it to reproduce. So whether the animal produces both, like spores do of mushrooms, you can have both, and it creates a spore, and then it encounters another one, and then it reproduces the mycelium. So either way, it's same type thing. But I noticed also on a published article. This was published by Crossmark. It's called Evolutionary Perspectives on Clonal Reproduction in Vertebrate Animals. It talks about this a little bit, and it notes that some scientists have gotten animals to do this on purpose to parthenogenesis on purpose, excuse me, by giving them chemicals or UV radiation. So, if for some reason this snake can do this, can reproduce this way, I don't believe it was normal. It was not originally designed to do that. We have tons of radiation. In fact, if you look back, if you're going to go back from a biblical point of view, people used to live a whole heck of a lot longer than they do today, up to 900 years back in the Bible. And the reason of that, because there used to be, the Bible speaks very clearly, I believe, on a canvas that covers the whole earth. And I believe the purpose of that canvas, that water canvas or that water canopy, was to block UV radiation. And by doing that, you make life go a whole lot different on this planet. People can live longer, animals can live longer. And so you take that down, now you have massive amounts of UV radiation that affects all of humanity and all of animals, and it kills us over a certain amount of time. And, we develop cancers and all kinds of other diseases that normally would not have developed. And now scientists are actually using UV radiation to make parthenogenesis happen in different animals. That's just playing Frankenstein, in my opinion. But this article talks about how they're doing that. They're using UV radiation and exotic chemicals and microsurgical embryonic splitting to create parthenogenesis, which is so that you don't need another mate to reproduce. And so is this a result of some sort of radiation that that had fallen on these creatures, and now they're able to reproduce anywhere on the planet because they're one of the most prolific snakes in the planet. They're almost everywhere. They exist in all parts of the world. I don't know. Maybe they're a result of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I don't know. They have said they originated from Asia, so maybe, who knows? But I don't think it's normal. And not only that, but it's very rare that an animal has this ability. And number two, a lot of the animals that do have this ability, a lot of times they can choose whether or not to have a mate or not. And a lot of times when they don't have a mate and parthenogenesis happens, the offspring are unhealthy and a lot of times they die. It's not normal. That's what I'm saying. It's not normal to nature. As far as vertebrate animals go, there's some other animals, and those are more hermaphroditic. I think that's probably natural, but there's still a seed and an egg that has to take place before an embryo can be formed. But anyway, so there's my answer on that. And just so you know, Trey, your friend knows, he took 2 of every clean animal per Genesis chapter 7 and chapter 9. 2 of every clean animal and 7 pairs of every unclean animal on the ark. Okay, 2 of every unclean animal and 14 of every clean animal. I think I got that right. Yeah. Just so you know that he took only the animals whose breath of life was in their nostrils, so who could breathe oxygen through their nose. So you're not going to find snails on there. You're not going to find insects and tarantulas on Noah's Ark. Okay, it's only those animals which have the breath of life in their nostrils. Vertebrate animals, land animals, mammals. He didn't take a dolphin on the ark. Okay. All right, there you go. What's next? Number 3. What saved all of the freshwater fish and possibly the saltwater fish with the merging of the waters? Initially, all freshwater fish would have surely perished, as the rivers and lakes joining with the oceans would have resulted in a massive spike in salinity. And the addition of so much freshwater rain to raise the ocean levels above the highest mountain on the planet would have then in turn diluted the oceans to a point where all the saltwater fish would have died. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely 100% correct. The problem is you have a wrong presupposition. You're presupposing that everything was saltwater. The oceans were saltwater at the time, and that's not the case. We know science is very clear today that saltwater, the oceans are becoming saltier every year. The salinity is increasing every year, and that's because rainwater is taking minerals and throwing them into the ocean, and that increases the salinity. Excuse me. So chances are back, 3,000 years, 4,000 years ago at the time of the flood, which is, 4,400 years ago at the time of the flood, there was no saltwater fish. Everything was freshwater. Everything was freshwater, and as time went on, it became more and more salty as the minerals from dry land began to be washed into the ocean, or probably had a very low salinity. And there are plenty of scientific experiments already right now today where you can look up where they have taken freshwater fish and slowly but surely introduced them into saltwater, and they do fine. Same way reversed, vice versa. If you incorporate them slowly into a different salinity or lesser salinity, increased salinity or lesser salinity, they do just fine. It's just slowly they have to adapt. If you take a freshwater fish and plop them in salt water, it's going to die. If you take a saltwater fish and plop them into freshwater, it's going to die. But there are plenty of experiments that exist out there where they do it slowly and incrementally, and they have no problems at all. Okay, you guys do your own research on that. I'm not going to hold your hand. Like I said, Trey, I seriously doubt your friend wants to know this stuff for real. He's just poking fun at the Bible. If he goes out and does his own research, he can find these answers on his own. All right, number 4. Was that? Yeah, okay. No flooding over the Arctic. This is number 4. Such flooding over the Arctic would have surely melted the ice caps on both the northern and southern poles. The ice would have never reappeared in the same way they exist today. Well, you're, again, presupposing that the Earth had ice caps to begin with. It didn't. There's plenty of evidence found. They find camels up in the North Pole. They find all kinds of vegetation, palm branches, and, things that would only be found in temperates today where you have 70 degrees all year round. I'm getting ready to go to San Diego soon, and they have palm trees, and it's like a paradise out there. And they have all kinds of vegetation that you wouldn't near find where I live here. And it's because of their environment. But they find some of those palm trees and some of that environment that you see in San Diego up in the North Pole and in the South Pole, by the way. Why do they find those things there? Why did they find that vegetation? Why did they find a camel up in the North Pole? Because it didn't used to have ice caps. That's why. Very simple. So there was no ice caps before. Ice, when it's super, super, super cold, is magnetic. Okay? Ice, when it's super, super, super cold, is magnetic. And if you take ice, and there's plenty of experiments, again, online where you can research, taking ice and levitating it above a magnet. Super, super cold ice and levitating it upon a magnet. Now, if you noticed around your solar system, what we know about our solar system, Saturn's rings are made of what? Ice. All kinds of ice out there. There was an ice meteor that hit Barcelona a couple years ago. Ice still falls from the sky. A lot of the things that come into this atmosphere, if it doesn't burn up all the way, you'll find that it's ice that hits the Earth. Amazing phenomena. And so the Hovind theory that I learned a number of years ago, which I think really matches up with Scripture very well, is that a giant ice meteor about the time of the flood came in, because remember, the Earth, according to Scripture, had a giant covering over the whole Earth that protected it from UV radiation. A giant ice meteor came in, hit that covering, destroyed it, and it being ice was super cold, super magnetic. Our planet is a giant magnet with reversed, with magnetism at the poles of the Earth, the North and South Pole. There's a magnetic North and there's a magnetic South. So if you throw a giant magnet, at another giant magnet, and it can be split apart, it's going to go to the two poles of the magnet. Well, where are the two poles of our magnet? North and South Pole. That's very simple. Okay, just imagine, take a bunch of shavings of iron and throw them at a magnet. It's not going to sit in the middle. It's going to go to the two ends of where the magnet are. It's the exact same thing. Well, when ice, goes through, and as it increases in magnetism, as it gets closer to Earth, it begins to break up because it increases in speed. It begins to break up and goes where? To the two poles, North and South. Magnetic North, magnetic South. And that's why you have ice caps on the North and South Pole. Very simple. All right. Again, look it up. And look up the experiments where you can levitate ice over magnets. It's very simple. Super cold ice is magnetic. Okay. So there was no ice caps before the flood. Where did all the excess water come from? Where did it all go? Well, this kind of ties into your last question. So I'll save that for that. Let's just go ahead and get to number 6. How did all of the plants survive? Noah didn't drag 2 of every plant onto the boat. 40 days under miles of water would have crushed and suffocated everything to death, and even the plants. That is absolute nonsense. And, you're probably, your friend Trey probably lives in an apartment somewhere or in a subdivision and has never grown a plant before in his life, has no education in horticulture at all whatsoever, or any type of plant science, and so he has no idea what he's talking about. And that's okay, because that question is evident. Well, anyone who knows a little bit about horticulture or any type of plant science will understand that many plants out there will just propagate by roots and roots alone. I have this problem in my greenhouse, in my aquaponics system. I have an aquaponics system, and I have wood sorrel growing in my aquaponics system, and it has just, there's no getting rid of it. It's just a daily thing where I have to go out there, and as I'm working with my plants, I just pull out the wood sorrel as I see it. Wood sorrel, I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure it propagates by roots. Lots of plants propagate by roots. I have passion fruit out there, and passion fruit propagates by roots. There's lots of plants out there today, folks, that propagate by roots. It doesn't matter how much wood sorrel I pull up, as young as it is, if I leave any tiny piece of that plant behind, any tiny piece of that root, it will grow into an entirely new plant. So, and it's the same with my sunchokes and Jerusalem artichokes. When I grow sunchokes, if there's any type of, there's no way sunchokes is one of the most invasive plants on the planet, because it doesn't matter how good you clean out your sunchoke bed, if you just leave a minuscule piece of root, it grows into a whole new sunchoke plant, and with all new sunchokes. It's amazing. You don't need any plant, you don't need any seed, it just grows. And so, look at this. You have a devastating flood that comes in. And I don't know if your friend's ever seen a devastating flood that comes in. But when a devastating flood comes in, there's all kinds of floating debris that floats for a long time. And on that debris, I'm sure is going to be pieces of roots. It's going to be pieces of plants. It's going to be seeds. It's going to be insects. That's why we didn't take any insects on the boat, because they don't need to be on the boat. They're just going to float around the water for a year. Listing on all of the debris. So you don't need to take insects. They'll be just fine. And I've lived on the Merrimack River when I grew up, and floods came in all the time. And when they went away, insects by the bazillions just kept crawling up out of the mud, and all the floating debris everywhere. So you're never going to kill all the plants. The seed's still going to propagate. It's going to be everywhere. In fact, it's going to be everywhere even more than what it was. It's going to be more spread out more than where it ever was. So that's what happens when, there's no way you're going to kill it. A flood will not kill the plants. A flood will not kill the insects. There's no way. All right, so there's that answer. And, you learn that by going out and planting some things and learning how things grow. And so I would recommend to your friend Trey, and even you, Trey, to go out there and learn some of these things by planting plants, plant a garden, learn how to grow plants and how these things work, because you learn so much about the creation by doing so. Okay, number 7, and this ties in with number 5. Why aren't we finding the bones and other remains of present-day marine species such as whales and sharks in weird places like in deserts or near the tops of mountains? When the waters receded, there would have surely been cases of these things becoming stranded on land. Absolutely. And this number 5 is, where did all the excess water come from? Where did it all go? Yeah, there's all kinds of evidence. People find, like I said, people find all of these plants and remains down at the North and South Pole. Mount Everest, they have found clamshells on Mount Everest, on top of Mount Everest. Clamshells. Clams, I don't know if you know, but they're in the ocean, under the water. But they find clamshells in the closed position on, fossils on top of Mount Everest. How did a clamshell that's in a closed position, because a clam, when it dies, or a mussel, when it dies, it automatically immediately opens. When the mussel relaxes, it opens up. Well, how come they find all these things on top of Mount Everest? Well, when the flood came, all these clams got covered by a bunch of debris. They couldn't open because they were being covered with dirt. They all died. And then when the mountains, earthquakes and things, will change. I mean, earthquakes change the landscape so often and so much. When they happen, you have mountains rising and valleys falling over time of the course of the last few thousand years. Mount Everest wasn't around during the time of the flood. Okay, it just wasn't there. And so, so are a lot of these other mountains. They weren't there. They had maybe small hills, but that was it. And you had these giant mountains that are now, at one time below the flood, and they raised up with all this dead material, and they pushed all of this stuff to the surface. And now you can climb Mount Everest and find dead clams at the top of Mount Everest. Look it up. You can find all kinds of evidence of that. And there's all kinds of evidence of this stuff. They find Lompoc, California, is one of the largest reservoirs of diatomaceous earth, where diatoms are just fossilized algae, and where they harvest it for all kinds of different things in the food industry and medical industry. And they found a whale standing up on end, face down, up on end, through the diatomaceous earth. I don't know about you, but I thought whales went in the ocean, but there ain't no ocean there. It's all kinds of evidence for that, and it behooves your friend to go out and research these things. He has, gotten what he has gotten from his public school education, obviously, or his whatever school education, and he is going with that and running with it and making fun of the Bible. If he would just open his mind for a little bit, go out and research some of these creation arguments. Okay, go watch the Hovind series videos. They're pretty long, but they're packed full of information and packed full of photographic evidence of these things that I'm talking about. And so is Answers in Genesis. Answers in Genesis has tons of photographic evidence of all this stuff. Go look at it. Go research that. Go read about it. Ingest all of that and see if it brings a good counter argument to the things that he has learned. I think he'll find that the textbook definition of all these things are going to be severely lacking when he does. So, there are tons of species as whales and sharks in weird places like Lompoc, California, and clams on the top of Mount Everest. There are plenty of examples of this. You just have to go out and research and find them. In fact, I'll give you what's the dinosaur park out there in Texas, where they find dinosaur tracks alongside human tracks. I forget. Some of you guys will leave a comment below of where that is. I forgot. Dr. Carl Ball, I think, is the name of it. But yeah, you can go research that. Find dinosaur tracks alongside human tracks in the rock, in the fossil rock. Crazy, huh? I thought dinosaurs didn't exist with man, but some reason, we now have dinosaur tracks with human tracks. So there you go. I hope, Trey, I hope I'm not offending your friend too much, but, you know, show him the video. If he's interested, he'll look. If not, he'll just continue being the way he is and, you know, whatever. You know, he'll just have to deal with that. But all you can do is try. You know, you can try, and hopefully he'll take this to heart and go out and research it, and maybe somebody else will as well. All right, we'll leave it at that. Go home, read your Bible. Thanks.